husband named our daughter after his ex-girlfriend, so I matched his energy. When I was pregnant with my daughter, me and my husband had many discussions about what to name her. We only ever wanted one kid, so this was really important to us. My husband suggested the name Brittany. I liked it so much. I always wondered why my husband chose the name Brittany. Was he naming her after a relative? Or someone he knew? But he said he just liked the name, and so did I. A few months later our daughter Brittany was born. She is beautiful, and we welcomed her into our family with open arms. My husband had never spoken much about his past relationships. I asked him, but he always said there was no one special before me. So I just accepted that. But when my daughter was a few months old, I decided to go clean up the attic. I found a box full of letters my husband had written to a woman named Brittany. They even talked about getting married at some point. I confronted my husband about it, but he acted like it was no big deal. He said he had dated Brittany back in high school and he always liked the name. He didn't tell me that it was the name of his ex because he thought I'd get mad. He guessed right. Now every time I look at our beautiful daughter, all I can think about is his filthy ex. It drives me crazy. I tried to accept the fact that it's no big deal, but I can't live with it. It's been years since this happened, and he thinks that I don't care anymore, but I do. Recently, I have been telling my husband that Brittany has been looking super lonely, and mentioned that we should try for another baby. He wasn't pleased with the idea, but that didn't stop me. Let's just say that I got pregnant again. I know that he wasn't happy, but part of him was definitely excited. It was a rough pregnancy, and we had a boy, and I named him Kevin. My husband was telling me how stupid he felt that he didn't want another baby, and I couldn't have agreed more. Once we got home from the hospital, I packed my bags and left, and moved in with Kevin. Not my baby Kevin, but the love of my life since high school. I already had the divorce papers for my ex, and I should be expecting child support very soon. Me and my Kevin's spark is just as bright since high school, and I am so glad we have finally reunited after the years of texting throughout my marriage. Even though my baby Kevin isn't the biological father of my new husband, I am going to change his name to Kevin Jr. I can't wait. He can have custody of Brittany and I will have custody of Kevin Jr., so we will both be happy. So am I the jerk? My parents used my inheritance to buy my stepsister her dream car. Luckily God had a plan for her. My life was great when I was a kid. I had a mom and dad that loved me. I wasn't spoiled, but I never lacked anything. I had a healthy childhood. Things turned around when I was 15. My parents got a divorce. By the time I was 17, my mother had remarried. In addition to a new father, I also got the 14-year-old stepsister I never wanted. There is no other way to say it besides she is a spoiled effing brat, and I would rather die than be around that devil. She was manipulative and she wouldn't stop until people gave in to her wishes. If there was a doll she wanted, she would scream and cry until my mother and stepfather bought it for her. Once she got the doll, she would neglect it. She was just happy she got it instead of me. When my sister got older, she just got worse. When she was 18, she demanded that my mother and stepfather get her a car. But she wouldn't settle for a used compact. She had to have the new BMW 430i convertible, and if you don't know cars, just know it's a really effing expensive. Initially, my parents said no because they couldn't afford it. But she wouldn't let up. She made their life a living hell until they gave in. One day I woke up and a new car was sitting in my driveway. I was furious. But more than anything, I wondered, how did my parents afford the car? My family was by no means rich, and this car cost over $60,000. It would clean them out. I asked my mother how she paid for the car. At first, she didn't want to tell me, but eventually, she broke down. She told me she had used my inheritance money to pay for the car. I knew this was the last time I would let them prioritize my sister over me. My sister and I are not usually friendly, but I managed to get on her good side by inviting her to a high-end restaurant. I knew she would not be able to resist the luxury. I wanted to talk to my parents and my sister about my inheritance. As soon as I bring up the topic, my sister leaves and sticks me with a bill. Sure enough, my sister got into an accident on the way home. She completely totaled the car. And since it was her fault, my parents, had to spend thousands in insurance premiums. It's been 3 years, and my parents are still in debt even after selling the house. My sister dropped out of college, and let's just say she fell into really bad habits that I won't get into. I haven't spoken to them in years and I don't plan on it.
I demanded an open marriage. Now that my wife has a new lover, I ruined her life. My wife and I were happily married. We had everything you could think of, good jobs, a nice house, sweet kids. But I was bored. I wanted something more. It had gotten to the point where I was thinking of leaving the relationship. I had some conversations with my best friend since middle school, Alex. He told me about his open marriage, and said that was the saving grace of his relationship. I thought about it and decided an open marriage would be a good thing for me. It would make me appreciate my wife more. I told my wife about it, and she was heavily against it. But I couldn't let it go. I would beg her, and finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I told her that if she wasn't willing to try an open marriage, I would be leaving the relationship. She finally gave in. But first, we laid some ground rules. One of the most important ones was to never let our encounters become relationships. They were purely for instant gratification, one and done. We were both partying, going out and meeting people, and we always did it as a duo. We were both having so much fun, and nothing could have gone better. We continued this lifestyle and found ourselves more attracted to each other than ever. Alex was so right, and I couldn't thank him enough for putting the idea in my head. We were doing things in the bedroom we had never done before. One day, I was out and about, and I saw my wife in a restaurant. She was with a guy. All I could see was that he was wearing a hat. When I confronted her about it, she said she had begun seeing him. I reminded her about the most important rule, that it was all for instant gratification, and nothing else. Then she spewed out some of the nastiest things I have ever heard her say. She told me that she never loved me. The worst was when she told me how bad I was in the bedroom, and how much better Alex was. I looked at her, confused. You mean my best friend Alex? Yes, Alex. It all made sense now. Alex put me in this mess, and told me to consider an open marriage because he wanted my wife. She moved out that night and went to live with Alex and his wife. She did a 180 on her life. She even shut out the kids. They were hurt and confused. My wife and I divorced and didn't talk much after that, and neither did I talk to Alex. But then someone told me they had seen her out with yet another guy. I did not hesitate to visit her. I came to her door when I knew she was home with Alex. I told him everything. I told him how she is cheating on him, and turned her back on our kids. I told him how cruel she was when she left me. They were screaming with each other when I left, and I heard they broke up. She's all alone now, and with no one to support her. She's struggling financially. She sometimes comes to see the kids, but the relationship is nothing like before. Am I the jerk?
The devil offered me a deal. You always hear about the devil making deals in Hollywood. And I live in Hollywood, but I never thought he would try to make a deal with me. Now, this isn't the craziest thing I've been through, but it's probably a close second. Now, I am of Christian faith, and I have a great relationship with God. But if anything, I feel like that makes you more susceptible to this kind of thing. I mean, you never hear about like an atheist getting possessed. I don't know, just a thought. Anyways, it was just a normal day and I blinked. But when I opened my eyes, I wasn't where I was before. I was now sitting at a hardwood desk. I remember all of this in very clear detail, except for his face. In front of me on the desk was a stack of paper and a pen. When I looked at him, I knew he was the devil. He didn't say he was, I just knew. His eyes were gold like the ember of flame. I don't think I'll ever forget those eyes. They made me think of the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. And then he spoke. He said, I have an offer for you. Someone you know has sold their soul. You can give me your soul to save theirs, but you will have nothing you want in life, and I will own your soul forever. No love, no success, nothing that you've ever wanted. Or you can keep your soul and have everything you've ever wanted in life, but their soul will remain as mine. My biggest question? Who? But the devil is tricky, and he just said, someone you know. That could mean a friend, an acquaintance, a family member. Now the obvious answer is selling your soul is wrong. So why did it feel like that's what he wanted me to choose? This offer raised a lot of questions. Who would you give up your life and also your eternal life for? I would save my family, I would save my friends, but shouldn't the answer be I would save anyone? All of our souls should have equal value to God. But selling your soul is wrong, and I don't know what answer is right. So I asked for some time to decide, and then I blinked. The devil offered me a deal. The last thing I told you is I asked the devil for some more time to think it over. And then I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, I was exactly where I was before. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before, so I didn't really know what to think at that point. I knew I had to figure out my answer because I didn't know when he would come back. Contemplating this took up a lot of my time, and I asked close friends and family members what they would do, metaphorically. Because if you just come out and say, oh, I talked to the devil, people are gonna think you're Looney Tunes, like some of you probably think I am. Anyways, that wasn't the last time I spoke to him. About 3 months later, I blinked and the same thing happened. Except this time I was walking down the street and a man was walking towards me. I was a bit disoriented, and then the man bumped into me and looked me in the eyes. That's when I saw those same golden flamed eyes, and I knew the devil was back and he was ready for my answer. I had had a few months to figure out what I was going to choose, but 3 months wasn't enough time for me to make that decision. I don't know if an entire lifetime would be enough time to decide. Then it dawned on me. It's not right to make a deal with the devil. It was presented to me that there were only two choices. Sell your soul to save someone else and have nothing you ever want in life. Keep your soul, have everything in life you've ever wanted. But I decided not to decide. He hasn't been back to visit me since, but I don't know if that means he never will. What would you choose?
My 9-year-old brother nearly unalived my dad over money. My older brother Dave had gotten heavily into substances and street life as early as 12 years old, and my parents were beginning their divorce around this time. One night when I was 10, I had decided to take a nap in my bed when I woke up to the sound of things being smashed and yelling. I ran to the top of the steps and hid behind the rail to see 5 people, some with masks on, holding various weapons. They were smashing furniture and looking through things. I saw one of them pushing my dad and I heard someone yell, "Where's the money?" and I immediately went back to my room and called my mom. I did, however, recognize one of the voices of my brother Dave. My brother was 12 and he had a mask on, but the other 4 people looked in their late teens. My mom answered the phone and I immediately asked her where she was. She told me she had run to the store and asked me why I was whispering. I told her I was hiding in the closet because people had broken in and they were hurting Dad. I told her through tears I heard my brother too. My mom knew how much my dad enabled his actions, so her worry immediately turned to annoyance as she knew this was my brother's doing. She told me to stay in the closet and that she was on her way home. I kept hearing yelling and the sound of more things being smashed. Suddenly I just heard my brother scream my dad's name. His voice sounded so fearful. Then silence. I wait a bit, then slowly creep downstairs and see my dad on the couch dripping sweat, surrounded by my brother and his people. They were on the phone with 911 asking for an ambulance and my dad looked like he was in a lot of pain. I screamed and ran out of the house, passing all the broken furniture and even our smashed car on the way out. I called my mom back and told her my dad was hurt and she told me to go to the neighbors. My brother broke in that day because he was demanding money from my dad and he had told him no. He felt entitled to it. So he broke in to get it. My dad had a stroke that day from stress. From that point forward I have never been able to look at my brother the same. My dad never pressed charges and gave my brother the money afterwards.
My girlfriend found out that I was taking one for the team when we first met, and now she's spiraling in insecurity. How do I get her to be confident in my attraction to her again? About 2 years ago, I was at a party with a friend of mine who we'll call Josh. Me and Josh were just vibing to the music and chilling when he suddenly spots 2 girls. The one he was interested in was this pretty blonde, while the other was her heavier friend. That's not to say her friend was unattractive, but just a little noticeably bigger than what could be considered average weight. Anyway, Josh turned to me and urged me to be his wingman by taking one for the team and distracting her friend while he chatted with the blonde. After a little back and forth, I decided to just do it and be a good friend. So we made our way over and made our move, where I would go in first and start chatting with their friend while Josh began flirting with the girl he was interested in. Again, this friend I was talking to was by no means unattractive, just a bit heavier than what most guys, myself included at the time, would go for. I thought she was very sweet, even though I was just talking to her out of obligation. It didn't really matter anyway, because ultimately the girl Josh was into already had a boyfriend apparently and had seemingly brushed him off, with him eventually patting me on the back to signify I didn't have to chat with her friend anymore. So I decided to politely end the conversation, however, not before she asked for my Instagram, which I decided to give her. I didn't really think much of it at the time, and I was certain I would never see her again. However, a couple of days later, I ran into the same girl in my school's campus store. I didn't really recognize her at first, but she seemed to know me immediately. We decided to chat for a bit, and I was reminded of her name, Megan. Anyway, it was really just small talk until Megan suddenly seemed a little awkward. I asked her if everything was alright, and she replied that nothing was wrong, but she wanted to know if I wanted to go out with her sometime. This actually came as a shock to me because it was the first time a girl had ever made the first move and asked me out. So even though she wasn't really my type at the time, I said yes, and that was probably the best decision of my life. Me and Megan really hit it off, and before long we were in a serious relationship. Any qualms I had about her weight were gone immediately after the first time we slept together, and I actually found her body to be really soft and comforting. I had never felt so relaxed cuddling with someone before I met her. We've been dating for 2 years now, and I absolutely love her. She's my everything, and I have even been thinking of proposing as soon as we are both done with school. Everything was perfect until last month. Last month, we hosted a small get-together just for a few friends who were also in relationships, like a couple's game night sort of thing. It was here where Josh, who has been my good friend for years, was pretty drunk and made a joke about how if he had never forced me to take one for the team back then, I would never have found the love of my life. The joke didn't really register to me as anything negative, and I was also drunk, so I just laughed it off. Megan was cuddled up next to me on the couch though, and asked what Josh meant by that. I told her nothing, but Josh, being the drunk idiot he was, elaborated and told her the story about how we met through my perspective at the time. Megan just said, "Oh," and didn't really react, so I figured she just brushed it off. However, the rest of the night she seemed kind of distant and even a little sad. Finally, once everyone had left, she let it all out and started crying. She was essentially in shock because this whole time she thought I approached her then was because I was interested in her, and learning that it was because I was forced to seemed to bring back old insecurity within her. It doesn't help that she's actually gained weight since back then, even though I don't really have any problem with that and have told her that multiple times. I immediately gave her the full story about how I fell for her right after that, and I have loved and adored her ever since. She seemed reassured, and we even cuddled the whole night after that. Since the night, though, she's been acting differently. It's like she's lost her confidence around me. She only wears large, baggy clothes, even though she never used to before. She refuses to change with me in the room and hardly eats in front of me. Before, I used to playfully tickle her stomach sometimes, and she'd always smile and play along. Now, she always seems insecure when I so much as accidentally graze it. She also refuses to sleep with me without a shirt on. So far, I sat her down multiple times and explained that her body is incredibly attractive to me and that there's no one more beautiful in my eyes than her. But it's like she doesn't believe me. Lately, I've been thinking about offering her to come to the gym with me, but I'm scared she may be more insecure at that suggestion. How do I get her to believe that I love her no matter what she looks like? That I truly adore her in all aspects? I just want her to be confident in herself again.